Chapter 1. The Runaway Groom. Asher. Vale never planned to get married, least of all into a loveless corporate alliance. He wasn't the type to be tied down. Sharp-tongued, fiercely independent, and allergic to control, Asher lived his life on his own terms. That is, until Elias, his golden boy elder brother, disappeared days before his wedding to Lucienne Blackthorne. The Vale family was in shambles. Their name, once respected in upper circles, was already on shaky ground. A broken alliance with the infamous Blackthorne Empire would spell ruin. Reputation mattered more than love in their world. And so, in a panicked midnight meeting drenched in desperation, Asher was presented with a choice that wasn't a choice at all. "You'll wear the ring," his mother said, voice trembling. "Just until Elias returns. Please, Asher. We'll lose everything." He wanted to say no. He should have said no. But he didn't. The wedding was private, elegant, controlled. No reporters, no grand ceremony, just two signatures on a contract dressed up as vows and a legal binding between two powerful families. And there, standing at the altar, was Lucienne Blackthorne. Asher remembered holding his breath the moment he saw him. Cold, untouchable, and terrifyingly beautiful. Dressed in a sleek black suit with a crimson pocket square, Lucienne looked like a man sculpted from secrets and smoke. There was no surprise in Lucienne's eyes, no flicker of confusion at the groom switch. Only calm acceptance, as if he'd been expecting this outcome all along. "You're not Elias," Lucienne said quietly, his voice smooth and lethal. "No," Asher replied, lifting his chin. "And I don't want to be." Lucien's lips curved into a smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Perfect," he murmured, leaning in just enough so only Asher could hear. "Just as I planned." Asher stiffened. What did he mean by that? But before he could ask, the officiant began the formalities. And just like that, the ceremony was over. Lucienne took his hand for the ring exchange. Asher flinched at the unexpected warmth of his touch. Lucien's fingers lingered too long. His gaze burned too deep. It wasn't passion. It was possession. Back in the penthouse suite that night, Asher tried to keep his distance. He sat stiffly on the couch while Lucienne poured them both a drink. "I won't pretend to be happy about this," Asher snapped. "I'm only doing this to protect my family." Lucienne handed him the glass, ignoring the venom in his tone. "That makes two of us," he said, before settling down across from him. "Though I suspect you'll find I'm quite the husband." Asher scoffed. "I didn't sign up to be your doll." "No," Lucienne murmured, eyes locked on him again. "But you're mine now, regardless." There was something final in the way he said it. Something chilling. And Asher suddenly felt like a mouse who had stepped into a trap disguised as a wedding aisle. What Asher didn't know, what no one knew, was that Elias never ran. Lucienne helped him escape. 3 months ago, Lucienne had sent a forged email to Elias from an anonymous source, exposing alleged dark secrets from the Blackthorne family. He knew Elias would run. He knew the Vale family's desperation would push Asher into the spotlight. Because Asher was the one Lucienne wanted, not the mild-mannered Elias, not the family heir. It was the boy who once called him a narcissistic jerk at a gala years ago, the one who never bowed his head, the one who forgot him entirely, and would now have no choice but to become his. Lucienne watched Asher that night as he stormed into the guest room, refusing to share a bed. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself a real smile. "We'll get there," he whispered into the dark, sipping his wine. "You'll hate me, but you'll still be mine." Chapter 2. The Spark That Lit the Flame. 3 years ago, the grand ballroom of the Ashcroft Hotel gleamed with opulence. Chandeliers glittered like icicles, champagne flowed like a river, and every inch of the evening reeked of old money and rehearsed smiles. It was a charity gala for high society benefactors, cloaked in silken lies and polite pretenses. Asher Vale was 21, reckless, radiant, and entirely uninterested in the stale elite culture he'd grown up around. His parents had dragged him there as part of their usual campaign to shape him into a suitable Vale heir. even if Elias was the one everyone expected to take the reins. He'd lasted barely an hour before sneaking a few glasses of wine and slipping away from the stifling circle of donors. And that was when it happened. He'd turned too quickly. A clink, a splash. A full-bodied swirl of Merlot spilled onto the chest of a stranger in a black silk Tom Ford suit. "Shit!" Asher froze mid-step, eyes widening in horror. "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to." The man didn't move. He merely looked down at the stain seeping into his custom blazer, then lifted his gaze to meet Asher's. Steel gray eyes, razor-sharp cheekbones, a presence like a thundercloud. Lucien Blackthorne. The man everyone at the event whispered about. The one CEOs bowed to. The ruthless, enigmatic billionaire who rarely showed his face in public unless there was something he wanted. Everyone else would have apologized profusely and begged for mercy. Asher? He raised his chin and scowled. "Maybe if you weren't standing there like a statue, you wouldn't have gotten doused," he snapped, thrusting the empty glass into a passing server's hand. "Nice suit, though. Shame about your attitude." Lucien blinked. The room felt suddenly quiet around them. He was used to fear, awe, deference. But this boy? This fierce-eyed, foul-mouthed firecracker? He was furious, unapologetic. "Who are you?" Lucien asked, intrigued despite himself. "No one who'll beg for your dry cleaning bill," Asher huffed. "If you'll excuse me, I've had enough of overfed egos for one night." And he stormed off, leaving Lucien Blackthorne standing there in a soaked, wine-stained suit, with the ghost of a smirk tugging at his lips. That night, Lucien didn't return to the gala. He didn't even bother changing his suit. He left early, got into his car, and replayed the moment in his head a dozen times. Who the hell was that? He found out by morning. Asher Vale, youngest son of the Vale family, commerce graduate, known for being temperamental, sharp-witted, and difficult to manage in public settings. Not close to his brother, frequently skipped family business events, had a habit of getting into fights with reporters, fiercely independent. Lucien now devoured the reports. He remembered every quote, every photo, every sarcastic tweet Asher had ever posted. What started as fascination quickly morphed into something darker. Obsession. He wanted to know everything. Lucien hired private investigators, not to blackmail Asher, but to understand him. What coffee he drank, what time he left the gym, what books he read, how he sometimes paced when he was anxious and doodled when bored. He never made contact again, because he knew what he wanted, and it wasn't a one-night encounter. He wanted forever. And Lucien Blackthorne never went into anything unprepared, so he waited and watched. And when the Vale family proposed an arranged marriage for Elias, Lucien didn't decline. He accepted, and then quietly ensured Elias would never make it to the altar. Present day. Asher sat in the penthouse sunroom, sunlight spilling over him as he scrolled through news on his tablet. He'd barely slept. The wedding was over, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. Lucius Soaitoye walked in, silent as a shadow, carrying a cup of black coffee. He placed it in front of Asher without a word. Asher frowned. "You don't need to act like we're in love. This is a business arrangement." Lucien didn't respond. He just stood there, watching him quietly. And in his mind, he was replaying that moment from 3 years ago. That spark, that glare, that mouth. The boy who had spilled wine on him and changed the course of his life. The boy who still didn't remember him. "You don't have to pretend," Asher muttered again, sipping the coffee. "I'm not your fantasy." Lucien's lips twitched into a faint, secretive smile. "You were never a fantasy," he thought. "You were a plan. My plan. And now, mine." Chapter 3. The Fever Between Us. 5 months. It had been 5 months since the wedding, and Asher Vale still refused to call Lucien Blackthorne his husband. He lived in Lucien's sprawling mansion, because tradition demanded it, but he kept to the farthest bedroom in the west wing. He dined at separate times, avoided direct conversations, and spent his days either working at the foundation his mother forced him into or locked away with books and music. Lucian never forced himself on Asher, not once. But he was always there, at breakfast, silent and watching, in the garden, reading nearby, outside Asher's door at night, just leaning on the wall like a loyal dog waiting to be let in. It drove Asher insane. "Stop following me like some obsessed ghost," Asher had snapped one evening after finding Lucian waiting in the hallway again. "Don't you have a company to run, or someone else to stalk?" Lucian's answer was maddeningly gentle. "There's only you, Asher." Asher had thrown a lamp at his head. Lucian had ducked, caught it midair, and smiled. "Impressive aim," he said softly. "Try the vase next time." Asher was furious at how unshakable Lucian was. Nothing seemed to get under his skin. Not insults, not slaps, not the storm of fury Asher hurled at him every other day. "Why won't you just leave me alone?" Asher screamed one night, pushing him hard against the doorframe. Lucy insisted barely flinched. Instead, he took Asher's wrists in his hands, carefully, tenderly, thumbs brushing against his pulse. "Hurt me if it makes you feel better," Lucian whispered, voice husky. "Just don't leave." It terrified Asher, that bottomless patience, that longing, that intensity. So he ran to his room, locked the door, and tried to sleep. Except he couldn't. His body was burning. His skin prickled like static. His chest ached. He tossed and turned, sweat pooling on his lower back. He finally fell asleep only after hearing Lucian's soft footsteps outside the door, pacing, waiting. And it wasn't the first time. The changes came slowly. At first, Asher thought it was stress, or maybe a lingering fever, but then it started happening more often. His breath caught in his throat every time Lucian passed close. His legs went weak when Lucian brushed a hand against his lower back by accident, Lucian claimed. He couldn't fall asleep unless Lucian was in the same room, or at least outside his door. The scent Lucian wore, something dark, woodsy, and warm, started making Asher dizzy, addicted. His heart rate spiked whenever he caught even a whiff of it. And worst of all, he started craving it. Asher sat in the library one afternoon, curled in a window seat with a book he hadn't read a single word of. His fingers trembled slightly. His lips were dry, and his thighs pressed together, confused by a heat that hadn't been there before. Lucy Bion walked in moments later, silent as ever. And the moment his scent filled the room, Asher gasped quietly. He hated this. He hated how his body betrayed him. What are you doing to me?" Asher demanded, standing up with a fury he didn't feel. "What the hell is happening?" Lucian paused. He said nothing for a moment, then took a slow step forward, then another. And Asher didn't move. Couldn't. Lucian reached him, so close Asher could feel the heat radiating off his body. "I warned you," Lucian whispered, voice dark and low, "that I'd do anything to keep you." Asher's heart skipped. Lucian leaned in and nuzzled his neck gently. "You don't remember our first meeting, but I do. Every moment of it, every word. You made me feel alive, obsessed, mad. I need you, Asher." He pulled back, smiling faintly. "And now, you'll need me too." Asher staggered back, heart racing, confusion and anger clouding his mind. You're drugging me." Lucian looked pained. "No, just helping your body recognize what your heart is too scared to admit." Asher slapped him. Hard. Lucian took it, eyes shining with twisted devotion. "Good," Lucian whispered, touching his cheek. "Don't hold back. I want all of you, even the parts that hate me." Asher stumbled out of the room, heart hammering, lips trembling. But even as he fled, he couldn't deny it. He already missed his scent. Chapter 4. You can hate me, but you can't leave me. Asher Vale had never felt so trapped. Not by the mansion, not by the name Blackthorn, now stitched beside his own, but by the ache in his chest whenever he stepped too far from Lucian. He tried to run, more than once, The first time, he booked a hotel under a fake name, leaving a note that simply said, "Don't follow me." But he lasted 6 hours. By the 7th hour, he was curled on a cold floor, shivering violently, gasping for breath, his body burning in places he didn't understand. His limbs were weak, throat dry, skin itching for something, someone. Lucien had found him. He didn't even say anything, just wrapped a coat around Asher, lifted him into his arms, and carried him home. The second time, Asher made it to a friend's house. But halfway through dinner, he started vomiting. His skin broke out in hives. His head throbbed like 1,000 needles behind his eyes. His friend panicked. Lucien arrived before the ambulance did. "You're hurting because you're away from me," Lucien had said softly that night, sitting beside Asher's bed. "Your body remembers what your mind refuses to accept." That night, Asher didn't speak. But in the morning, with trembling hands and fury in his bones, he marched to Lucien's study. Lucien looked up from his desk, calm, composed, unreadable. Asher slammed both palms down. "What the hell did you do to me? Tell me, you psycho husband of mine." The word slipped out. Husband? And Asher immediately bit his tongue, angry at himself. But Lucien lit up like the sunrise. His eyes glowed, his lips parted with wonder, and then he stood slowly, walking toward Asher with the soft reverence of a man approaching divinity. "Say it again," he whispered. Asher glared. "No." Lucien only smiled wider. "You finally called me your husband." And then, before Asher could lash out again, Lucien pressed him gently against the wall, his arms bracketing either side, never forcing, just present. Overwhelmingly so. "I made you mine," he whispered, lips near Asher's ear. "It was always going to be you, Asher. From the moment you looked at me like I was nothing. At that gala, all fire and fury, I knew. I had to make you mine." Asher struggled, fists beating against Lucien's chest in frustration. "You drugged me. You made me crave you." Lucien caught his hands mid-swing, held them with a calm strength, then he kissed Asher's knuckles, one by one, and pressed Asher's own hand to his cheek, closing his eyes like it was the holiest touch. "Yes," Lucien whispered, "I made you addicted to my pheromones because I knew you'd try to run, and I couldn't let that happen." He opened his eyes, dark, tender, and terrifyingly sincere. "You can hate me, my love, but you can't leave me." Asher's breath caught. Something sharp and heavy twisted in his chest, because even though he wanted to scream again, even though he should have slapped Lucien, his hands trembled in Lucien's grasp. His knees weakened. His heart raced, not from fear, but from the way Lucien's scent curled around him like a safety net he didn't want to admit he needed. The realization hit like a slap of cold water. He was already bonded. Emotionally, chemically, without even realizing it. "You bastard," Asher whispered, voice cracking. Lucien leaned forward and kissed his forehead, soft, reverent, like he was kissing something breakable. "I'd destroy the world before letting it take you from me." Chapter 5. I Only Wanted You. The rain poured endlessly outside the Blackthorn estate, drenching the world in gray. Inside, the silence between Asher and Lucien felt heavier than thunder. It had been days since their last confrontation, since Asher discovered the truth about the pheromones. He hadn't spoken more than a sentence to Lucien since. Cold glares, avoided meals, ignored touches. Lucien had been patient, but even obsessions had breaking points. That evening, Asher sat curled up in the farthest corner of the library, a blanket draped over his legs, staring at nothing. He hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. His body throbbed with tension, his chest tight. He didn't want to need Lucien, but gods, the ache was unbearable. And Lucien felt it too. He appeared silently, his usually pristine suit wrinkled, eyes sunken with fatigue. "Asher," he said softly. No answer. Lucien stepped closer, kneeling in front of him. "Please, say something." Asher glanced at him briefly, eyes dull. "I told you I didn't want any of this." "I know," Lucian whispered. Then finally, something cracked. For the first time since Asher had met him, Lucien Blackthorn broke down. He sank onto the floor completely, hands trembling as he stared up at the one person who could unravel him. His cold mask shattered, exposing a raw, desperate heart. "I never wanted Elias," Lucien said hoarsely. "I only wanted you. I just couldn't leave it to chance." Asher's breath caught. "The gala 3 years ago. You looked at me like I was nothing. It drove me mad. You were the only one who ever saw through me. I had to find you again. I had to have you." "So you manipulated everything?" Asher snapped. "Even Elias running away?" Lucien nodded, ashamed. "I made sure he had the opportunity to disappear. I gave him the means. I even paid him to stay away. He never wanted the marriage either, but I—" He reached for Asher's hand, but stopped just inches away. "I just wanted you, Asher. I've never wanted anything else in my life." Silence. Then Asher stood up, legs unsteady. He tried to speak, tried to hold on to his anger, but his chest was too tight. He swayed slightly. Lucien was up in an instant, catching him. "You're burning up again," Lucien murmured, worry flooding his voice. "Your body, it's reacting. You've gone too long without the bond stabilizing." Asher gritted his teeth, furious. "You did this to me." "But I'm the only one who can fix it," Lucien whispered. "Let me fix it, just once. Then hate me all you want." That night, in a moment of weakness, or maybe clarity, Asher stopped fighting. He let Lucien hold him. He let Lucien kiss him. He let Lucien complete the bond. Their souls snapped together with a force that made Asher cry out, not in pain, but in overwhelming relief. Fire and obsession, passion and surrender, love that was toxic and pure all at once. For the first time since their wedding, Asher fell asleep in Lucien's arms without resentment clawing at his chest. The days that followed were calmer. Not perfect. Asher still snapped at Lucien when he was too clingy. He rolled his eyes at pet names. He stormed off when Lucien tried to spoon him during breakfast. But Lucien adored it all. He was a menace, a possessive demon when it came to Asher, but a lovesick puppy in private, always watching Asher like he was made of stardust. To the world, Lucien remained cold and untouchable. But in front of Asher, he was all soft smiles and whispered praises. 1 month later, Asher stood in the bathroom staring at the test in disbelief. Positive. His hand trembled. "Lucien?" he called out. Lucien practically flew into the room. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Asher shoved the test into his chest. Lucien blinked, read the result. And then he lifted Asher off the ground, twirling him around like he weighed nothing. "You're pregnant," he whispered, eyes gleaming with joy. "You're having our baby." Asher muttered, "Don't get too excited. I still might kill you before the baby is born." Lucien kissed his forehead anyway, cradling him gently. "Then I'll die the happiest man alive." Chapter 6. You Belong to Me. Asher sat curled on the velvet couch in the sunroom, one hand resting over his growing belly, the other gripping a mug of chamomile tea. The late afternoon sun glowed softly across his skin, but his thoughts were far from peaceful. Pregnant. He was 5 months along with the child of a man who had manipulated his entire life. And yet, it was that same man who now hovered like a storm cloud turned personal butler. Lucien cooked. Lucien carried. Lucien researched prenatal vitamins like he was preparing for a war. He even threatened the family doctor once because they spoke too clinically about Asher's condition. At first, Asher resisted every gesture. But slowly, quietly, it began to undo him. The gala. Asher didn't even want to go, but Lucien insisted, just for an hour, to maintain appearances. Asher was showing now, his stomach a soft swell beneath the sleek custom suit Lucien had chosen. Everything was fine, until a rival CEO walked up to Asher with a smirk. "You must be Lucien's spouse," the man said smoothly. "But if he ever bores you, you know where to find me." Lucia's words moved faster than lightning. One punch, two. The man was on the floor before anyone could blink. "You're mine," Lucien growled. voice low and terrifying. Mine to protect, mine to love. Asher didn't even flinch. In fact, later that night he said quietly, "Thank you for not holding back." Lucian blinked, startled. Asher rolled his eyes, face hot. "Whatever. Don't get smug about it." A week later. At Lucian's office, Asher waddled down the hallway of Blackthorn Corp, heavily pregnant and grumpy. He hated waiting for Lucian to return home, so he'd come to surprise him. What he didn't expect was to see Lucian's secretary leaning against his desk, giggling. "Come on, Mr. Blackthorn," she cooed. "You work too hard. You need someone who can relieve your stress." Lucian looked up at her, his voice frigid. "I've told you before. I'm only devoted to my wife. Your flirting is pointless. I kept you because you're efficient, but if this continues, I'll replace you." Asher, fuming, pushed open the door. Smack! The slap echoed in the office. Everyone froze. "You dare flirt with my husband while I'm carrying his child," Asher hissed. "You're fired." The secretary stuttered. You can't fire me. You're not my boss." Lucian stood behind Asher, gaze icy. "No, but he's my everything. He rules me. His command is my wish." He turned to the woman coldly. "Get out. You're done." The birth. 9 hours of labor, screaming, cursing, tears. Lucian never left Asher's side, not for a second. He held Asher's hand through every contraction, whispered promises against his forehead. And finally, their child arrived, tiny, red-faced, and loud. Lucian held the baby in shaking hands, then turned to Asher, eyes soft. "You'll never be alone again," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You belong to me. And now, to our child." Asher, exhausted and teary-eyed, managed a weak smile. "I still hate you," he mumbled. Lucian kissed his forehead. "I love you too." Epilogue: Chaos, Love, and Lullabies. Their mansion was never quiet again. Their child cried like they inherited Lucian's stubbornness and Asher's dramatic flair. Asher threw pillows at Lucian for buying a diamond-studded baby bottle. Lucian memorized lullabies just to hum them at night. They argued, they kissed. They lived in a world full of obsession and love, chaos and devotion. And somehow it was perfect.